Hi everyone, it's Jan from Jan Plans Things and welcome to my Plan With Me video for October. So I'll be going through my October setup today. Spring has arrived in Australia and I'm sorry if I sound a bit nasally today. I'm basically allergic to the world, so I was dreaming of a little bit of fall. So maybe that's why I ended up with a mushrooms theme. Today I'm going to be going through a couple of new techniques that I've been practicing with watercolor, and also you might have noticed that I've changed my notebook for this month. I've currently swapped into the Archer and Olive notebook, which you guys saw me review a couple of weeks back. I was super impressed with the paper quality. So I'm able to use much more traditional techniques in this notebook compared to the LT, which required a little bit of an altered technique because of the thin paper. You can see now I'm actually doing a wash, and you would have never seen me do that in the LT because it wouldn't have been as even. And what I'm doing now is I'm layering on a little bit of green and then just splotching on a few colors, but you've noticed I've kind of done it over the entire background, so there's kind of like, it kind of creates an even tone that everything sits on, so it feels like it's part of one lighting in one world. And I'm working towards the back, so it means that I'll have darker colors towards the back of the forest and then lighter colors towards the front, and I'll slowly build them up. And this is something I wouldn't have done as much in the LT because it requires a lot of traditional watercolor techniques where I'm just placing on paint and letting it run. And you can see me dabbing on some paints at the bottom to create that little gradient. Then it kind of naturally bleeds through because the paper is too thick. Not too thick, nicely thick. So the paper that the Archer and Olive notebook uses is a bright white 160 GSM paper. You can kind of see that it's even whiter than my white ceramic plate, so it's really, really bright, and it means that it's almost I have to put on a little bit more color than I'm used to because of how bright the paper is, because the contrast is so high. I'm also using a slightly different palette this time than what you usually see me doing. I'm using on the right you can see me using the whole bean palm box, which I'll upload a review of very soon. And then on the left, I've got a little dot card from Peppercon handmade watercolors, and they're really, really lovely. So I received the Peppercon handmade dot card when we did a little journal meetup over the weekend, and then they had this beautiful Venetian red there, which kind of also spurred me on to do mushrooms. So you can see now I'm just going through and slightly tinting the trees brown, but because we did that overall wash before, it kind of still feels like it's in one scene and I can build out the shadows. And because the watercolor is so translucent, that color still pulls through underneath the darker colors, and the lighting is kind of uniform all the way through. I think a technique like that works particularly well if you want to make a really dreamy landscape. I've seen a lot of people use a similar technique when they're doing like gradient colored hair on characters. So that's just layering down a wash and then just putting a few colors on there first. And because this paper is reacting a lot more like watercolor paper, I'm much more relaxed just to put splotches of paint on and just let the watercolor bleed into itself to create those effects, which is really kind of cool because I have been adjusting my technique a bit, and I kind of got really used to painting that way on the LT, so it took a little bit of adjustment to change my style a bit. So now I'm doing my monthly layout, and at this point I'm going to have to apologize to you guys because Humphrey was being a little bit of a special character this week, and he kept on walking into my screen, and I didn't realize that as he walked into it, he'd slowly moved everything, and at some point the camera slightly goes out of focus, and I didn't realize until I finished the spread, so I apologize in advance. So the design for this one, I've had a little bit of fun with it. So with my monthly spreads, I find that I don't write a whole lot on my monthly, but I do want to have something fun, so I do a bit more experimental spreads. So this time around I've got Humphrey's tail, and also had a little raccoon sitting on giant mushrooms. So either the mushrooms are giant or the raccoon is tiny, so one or the other. he's holding a little jar, and I kind of imagine it having like a little acorn or something, and then they kind of just burst into life. And on the branches, there's going to be little red berries that will hold the dates of the month. So it's kind of it's a little bit fun, and I kind of just like it because it also means I can draw like a nice big spread, but also have it functional with the little dates and reminders all the way around it for my monthly. So I transfer the monthly things from my future log at the front of the book. So at some point this month I'll try and film the setup for the beginning of this notebook, so when you're setting up a bullet journal for the first time. What I'm doing now is I'm using a sap green in the whole bean pans, and I'm slowly mixing it with just a little bit of yellow ochre to get that variation sometimes, and sometimes I'm just painting it and just letting the brush run dry, because as I paint it slowly becomes paler because the water comes through a little bit more. And then every now and again I'm mixing that same pool of green with a little bit of brown, so that everything's kind of in the same tone. So I'm not mixing a brand new color every time. I'm using that same puddle of green that I mixed at the beginning. And that means that as I'm painting, the tones, or overall, they feel like they're part of one family. Now when you're using watercolors, and if you don't want the two colors to blend together, like at the moment I'm painting 2 adjacent mushrooms or 3 adjacent mushrooms, and I actually don't mind so much if the colors run. But if you're having really complementary colors right next to each other and you don't want the paints to run into each other, you try and paint in different sections. So you see a lot of the times I'm moving all around the page because I don't want paints that are still drying to be touching each other, because they'll just kind of bleed into each other. So you can kind of be strategic about it. But when you're doing something above, like where the giant leaves are and it doesn't matter so much, you can kind of just go for it and have some fun with it. But especially if you're painting florals and you want that like sharp line in between the petals, then then you might consider painting just in different areas first. So you'll see a lot of time lapses when people are painting florals that they paint in different sections. So that's just something to think about as well. Right after I finished painting the base area of all the leaves and the mushrooms, I found that the painting wasn't grounded as much. Then I kind of just had some fun. I got the big wash brush from that I'm using, the White Nights one at the moment, and just kind of did a big background of it. I'm using a mix of the Venetian red that Peppercon gave me to get that like really nice red in the mushrooms, and then I'm just using a white gouache at the moment to put the spots in afterwards. You could also put masking fluid down first if you want to use it that way, and you can just kind of erase it and have the paper show through. And because the Archer and Olive paper is so white, that would probably work really well as well. I'm just putting the dates in now around the berries. I mean, what you probably notice now that is I've gone through and I've done it in pencil first, because I found that if I kept doing it like straight off the bat on camera, I just can't count, and I kept doing the wrong amount of dates. So I've just gone through and just quickly sketched it in pencil as well. You might have also noticed that I'm wearing a little bracelet on my right hand. That's from Daniel Wellington. They were nice enough to send me a little bangle gift, and I can share with you guys a 15% off code store wide. So you can use that on top of any offers, and that's valid until the 30th of November. So the code is Jan15, and you can kind of see that in the description below. And now I'm moving on to my mood tracker. And my mood tracker is always a bit of fun. I feel like it's like adult colouring in. So I always try and draw something that I'd have fun colouring in during the month. Sometimes I forget to colour in each day, so I do a little note on my pages about what the feeling was overall that day, and I might just paint a few all at once at the end of the week. This time around I'm doing like a little twig with mushrooms growing out of it, the idea being that I paint each mushroom cap a different colour depending on how I was feeling that day. So I use warm and happy colours like yellows and reds for happy days, and then bluer for more mellow days, and then like purple for average days. So I think this will look really fun in the end. The thing with mood trackers is that you're kind of hoping that it'll look kind of nice at the end of it because you don't finish coloring it in till the end of the month. But I always try and make something that I think would look really fun, that's all colourful, because you kind of wish that you have colourful days. And you know, if you do have a couple of blue days, it doesn't matter so much because it makes the yellow and happy days a little bit brighter. On my right hand side, I'm currently working on my ideas page, and I've used my trusty IKEA coaster to make that little circle, so it's like a little garland with little mushrooms on the top. And I've just free-handed some rectangles, and I basically use this to plan video ideas. I track my Instagram and YouTube channel as well in one of the bubbles, and then also any promotions or giveaways that I'm planning, and stores that I might be talking to, just so that you guys know. I've been really lucky that I've got a couple of giveaways planned, so always check my my Instagram or Jam Plans Things links page so that you can see the current giveaway. I've got one on at the moment with notebook therapy, and I think that's ending today, and then another one with TIJN glasses, so you can get those as well. I'm moving on to my weekly spread at the moment, and you can kind of see I'm putting on what looks like a creamy sticky stuff, and that's the masking fluid. It's like white glue almost, and you can get this in different colors like pink and blue as well if it's a bit hard to see. I actually struggled to see this on the LT because it's almost a very similar color to the LT paper, but I was kind of shocked at how yellowed it was when I was painting on the Archer and Olive. So there's my dirty owl. I drew him afterwards. I'm like, wow, he looks really funny, but that's okay. I'm sticking with it. I think he kind of looks cute, but what is he standing on? The glass mullion shouldn't exist, and I'm an architect. I should know that. He can't actually stand on that part of the greenhouse, but that's fine. So the idea being that the parts I've masked out will be white after I peeled it out, and then I will paint on like leaves and stuff, so it's kind of like growing in the greenhouse underneath, and the white line's kind of like an indication of the frame without actually drawing the frame. I've put a wash of colour underneath because I don't actually mind writing over wash. It kind of makes it feel like a little bit special when you're writing on the page and it's all coloured. I've mixed the blue at the top with a little bit of the green. From the left to the right of the blue wash, you can see it starts a little bit greener because I kind of wanted to tie those two colours together. I've done a similar technique to the very first page where I put a wash down first and just little splodges of yellow and pink just to kind of tie that whole area together. And kind of notice how the paper isn't crinkling at all, so I don't have to worry about going back like I did with the LT and picking up the excess paint, so I can do some things like this with the giant washes and use this type of technique. And it's kind of fun just altering it a little bit. It does mean that I do have to like go over it a little bit more to make the colors a little bit darker, but I do feel like painting this way is a little bit more forgiving, especially if you're following traditional watercolor tutorials online compared to painting in the LT. But that being said, I still love my LT. I'm still very comfortable painting in it. This is kind of different because I kind of just wanted to show you guys what it would be like painting in something that's a little bit more traditional. The paper is really nice and thick. I kind of mentioned it before. You've kind of seen me flicking through as I've been working on these spreads, and I haven't skipped any pages at all. There is like no ghosting and no bleed through, so it's pretty amazing. You can see now I'm just going through and just darkening the back of the leaves so there's a little bit more definition to it. I've used my Pentel Pocket Brush Pen throughout the entire video to do the line work around any of the leaves. Any writing you see is either with the Tombow Fudenosuke hard tip pen, which would be for lettering, or the Sakura Micron for something that's really small. And similar to the front page, I've made sure that I've kept the same base green, which is the sap green, and I'm either adding a little bit of yellow to the green or adding a little bit more emerald green to it so that it's all within the same family and it has that same base color. I'm also really grateful that over the weekend I was speaking to Shane Chan and pepperconarts, and they were educating me a lot about pigments. So I've been really having a lot of fun learning about pigments over the last week, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you guys what I learned and try a whole bunch more of like handmade watercolors. You can kind of see just then I had peeled off the masking fluid and how white the lines look underneath. I'm really happy with that. So this is basically my setup with my little mushrooms woodland theme, and I hope you guys found that helpful and you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.